Hi, I'm Randy Reid. I'm the Executive Director of the National Lighting Bureau, and we are here at our inaugural Edison Awards. Originally, we were to do this at Light Fair to make the actual presentations, but with Light Fair being canceled, we're doing it through Zoom, the next best thing. I'd like to introduce our Director at Large, Mary Beth Gotti. Mary Beth was in charge of the Edison Awards, and Mary Beth, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks so much, Randy. It's my pleasure to really chair this inaugural year of the Tesla Awards here in 2020. And, you know, just a little bit, why the Tesla Awards? Why another lighting award program? And, you know, you think about, you know, the basic tenet of the National Lighting Bureau, high benefit lighting. And when you think of some of the key themes today, one of the big ones is the value of lighting. How does lighting make the world better for people, for the environment? So we want to highlight the value of lighting in these projects, but above and beyond that, we wanted to keep it simple. We wanted anybody who's got a project, which could be small or large, that's done some creative things that enhance the value of lighting for people in those spaces. So, you know, it could be new construction, it could be retrofit. It really gives us the opportunity to share best practices too. You know, what have you done that works? Have you done things that didn't work? Any surprises? What about collaboration? You know, how do you, when you come up with the design, who else was involved in really, you know, evaluating the project? So we're really pleased to be part of this, and we're looking forward to, again, fine-tuning it and getting better and better each year. I'd like to introduce our judges. We had 5 great judges this year that helped judge the projects. From the Lighting Research Center, we have John Paul Frieseneer. John Paul. Ruby Jadwitt, a director of the National Lighting Bureau. Howard Lewis, vice chair of the NLB. Terry McGowan, a director of the NLB. And James Yorgey, who is the treasurer. So again, big thanks to them for taking time out of their schedules. And again, they were really wonderful to work with and did a great job. Well, it's my pleasure to really present this award for Covington, San Francisco. And the designers are Paula Martinez-Nobles, Charles Stone, Kathryn Czub, and Amy Leader. So congratulations to all of you on an absolutely wonderful job. And I'm just going to introduce the project and then ask a question, and please feel free to just tell us what you did and why it was so successful. First of all, it looks like a wonderful space to work in. It's called the Office in the Clouds. I mean, just absolutely stunning views from some of these top floors in an office building in San Francisco. Some of the comments, the strong curved lines and bold white hold down light show the complexity of the space. You've got perimeter daylight harvesting, which also has its challenges, right? Talk a little bit about your project, and I want to just start with architectural coves. I mean, they're such an outstanding feature of the design, and you mentioned the challenge of creating perfect coves with rounded corners is extremely difficult. We're going to talk a little bit about, you know, what you did and why it was so well done.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us, first of all. We have worked with this architect for quite a long time. And one of the things that we've learned with working with LSM is that we have to pay very close attention to all the details. Specifically in this project where the building itself, the tower, curves at the very top, which is where our floors are, there were some existing curves to the floor plate. And so wanting to take advantage of what was existing, wanting to take advantage and play off of it, we actually developed some curves with just the architecture and the interior with the architectural team and really followed them along with the lighting. So some of the curves you see in some of the main photos that were submitted are really just taking advantage, playing off of the, like I said, the existing tower and drawing the user's eye, drawing the visitors out into San Francisco, looking out the window. We didn't want to take away from the view, which was the most important thing from being on those floors. So really, it was especially important for us to be able to successfully highlight the architect's finishes, their curves, and making sure that the coves look just as good. So when we say that it was quite difficult, you can imagine how precise we needed to be in order for the coves to look continuous, for the coves to look seamless, and not have any interruptions despite the curving nature of the tower.
Any tips, or I mean, a lot of on-site fine tuning, or anything in order to make them as perfect? I mean, is there any suggestions you can offer to others how to make that happen?
Well, we were on site quite a bit. We actually were on lifts with the contractors looking at different conditions. Some of the curves in the high ceiling, the cove that you see in that main photo, we actually did have to play with setting the fixtures at different distances from one another and from the cove lip, and playing around with gels and things like that to just soften the edge and soften the curve.
Right, now I know everything's LED, of course, so within this space, any tips on the types of product that you were looking for in order to make this happen?
Well, we needed it to be flexible. The product needed to be flexible enough that we could meet the strict turnaround time, strict lead times in order to complete the project in time. So we couldn't be too precise about having fixtures that were, custom lengths or anything like that. They needed to be fixtures that could easily land at the job site, be installed quickly by the contractor, and then have enough wiggle room for us to play with it. So yeah, we had to just look for a manufacturer that could do all of those things.
Great, great. Another thing you mentioned was the challenge of minimizing dead zones at the inner boundaries. You got this perimeter daylight harvesting going on here. So, so what were some of the key things? What do you think was really key in really minimizing these dead zones?
I'll let, if Charles or Amy or Katie want to answer that one, I'll share the microphone if that's okay.
Sure.
Ladies, go for it.
Well, I would say that, which Paula had hinted on earlier, embracing the vertical planes and embracing the architectural elements, and really keeping lighting treatments towards those elements. So you can see that we have light tracing the edge of the perimeter facade, and then stepping back to have the coves that stay tight to either the walls or anchor themselves over that double height space. I think the key was really using the volumes in the space and using that to guide where light lives. And of course, with the daylight harvesting, understanding at what extent does the electric lighting get controlled by that harvesting, and where can we make sure that our electric lighting kind of is at the boundary to ensure that the volume stays full.
Well, just to add to that, our comment about the unfortunate, I guess, what ends up happening often too many times with a dead zone around the perimeter is when you have, cloudy days that are sadly too dark to really look out the window and see anything, especially in San Francisco on these floors. You have the heavy fog. What we wanted to avoid is obviously putting too much light at the perimeter where you don't necessarily need it, but also when you're using daylight harvesting and you know that your lights in the interior are getting dimmed down, especially at the perimeter because they're in that zone, that it didn't feel too much like a no man's lane at the perimeter. So playing with the coves and allowing those to sort of bounce off of the glass, and also allowing some of that special sparkle at the perimeter, we had to be thoughtful about that. We didn't want everything to fall away with a cloudy day.
Great. One of the comments on the project said it says the lighting design enhances the mood and encourages productive collaborative workspaces. Any of you can think about some of the feedback you've gotten from the occupants of this space?
Charles? No?
No, Amy, go for it. You were there. You were there more than I was.
I think using the design that we had, keeping it simple, but yet, as exactly what Paula and Katie has said, we're highlighting the architecture and letting that be the main speaking points. Kind of allows for this clean work environment that doesn't distract your focus, and therefore allows you to be as productive as possible in an environment that you feel comfortable in. And in the private offices, it's a simple design approach of a linear scheme, but also still having a little bit of decorative light at the perimeter, just as Katie had mentioned, in the main space. And that kind of just ties the whole office level, private space, public space into the same tone.
Well, definitely the feedback that we've gotten through the architect and the owners is, you know, the view is the most important thing, and we weren't competing with the view.
How about any comments from our judges?
Yeah, hi, it's Jim Yorgey. It's a fabulous looking project. It's just marvelous. And one of the things, you have certainly great views, but you know, sometimes daylighting can be overwhelming in a space. And are there shades integrated with the lighting in some way? Are there automated shading, and is it used to help? I mean, you can use shades to reduce sun glare, but you can also use them just to cut back daylighting and reduce regular, you know, sort of normal glare from the daylight.
Yeah. Well, it was especially important to have shading in the conference spaces where you didn't want it, the camera to focus wrongly on the exterior, right? And you wanted to focus the user's attention and not necessarily blow out the image. So shading was especially important in conference rooms, but it was really a big move for the architect and the team to not want to hide the view out the window. So the big public space actually doesn't have any shading.
Jim, you did touch on one of the key design pressures, which is when you go up in that elevator and step off on that high floor, which really is at the shoulders of the Salesforce Tower, you are struck by the image across that deep lobby. It's extraordinary. It's wow. And the view to Alcatraz and out to the bay, it's just, oh my. Well, of course, that's the big challenge. Now what? That challenge of daylight is everywhere.
Yeah.
You have plenty. It's abundant. It's free. It's all there. And in fact, so much of our design reaction, the curving coves, the strong moves, lighting surfaces in the lobby, the choice of downlights, the refined details, they all contribute to having no distraction from the space you're in and to provide luminosity that we think it's an ethereal effect. It really is extraordinary at sundown, where you just can't believe you're in an office building.
The coloring and the brightness of within the space, I think the issue with daylight also with large windows is the contrast to the interior. And I think you've solved that problem here.
Well, that's where the brilliance of this particular architect comes in. There's a lot of white, but when we get contrasting material, we make sure to pay attention to the lighting so that it's strong enough to stand up, in this case, against the powerful force of daylight in the space. And I just want to say how proud I am of Katie and Amy and Paula. This took a lot of visits. It's just an office floor, but not when you go up and step into that lobby, you realize it's much more.
I think another thing to point out with working with daylight in a space like this is being especially mindful of the vertical surfaces, knowing that that's one way that you can, you know, I don't want to say compete with daylight because we don't want to, but that's one way that you can combat the falling off or falling dark, is if you're, you know, when you're looking out the window, if your vertical surfaces, when you turn around and your eyes have adjusted to daylight, you turn around, there's still some vertical surface that's illuminated. And that's something that, you know, we were able to convince the architect very early on. And so it was just full steam ahead as soon as we got over that conversation. Another thing you probably noticed in the photos is there's very few downlights. There's not really much direct general illumination. It's all ambient soft cove light. And we were, of course, nervous. Is that really enough for a public space, for a lobby like this? But it's all white and it's all generous coves, and it's really amazing how, you know, perhaps 20-foot candles or 10, 15-foot candles in the evening sounds low, but in a space that's all white, in a space that's all curves, and generous coves, how much that feels like it's completely enough light.
Yeah, this is a building of coves, and I congratulate you on how uniform they look in the pictures. I had to bring up those pictures again. Did you specify that in a certain way so that you, for example, did not get color variations or brightness variations? Did you mock things up beforehand, or how did you handle that? Because unless those coves are consistent, this thing doesn't hold together.
Yeah, no, we did. We had various mock-ups. We were consistent with the manufacturers that we used, or one manufacturer that we used in all the coves. So we wouldn't have a large variety of color temperatures. We were very, very strict about making sure that every surface inside the cove was white and matte so that we could, benefit from all the reflections being very uniform. And we were lucky enough to be involved on site early enough that we could get on a lift. We could adjust fixtures with the construction team and with the architect, so that the finishes were really properly illuminated.
We also developed some particular, well, they're not really tricks. They're old tricks, but techniques to make end-to-end smoothness. In other words, when two pieces of linear fixture come together in a cove, what are the techniques to minimizing the fall off at that point on the cove surface? And so everything I ever learned is up there in those coves.
I have a quick question regarding how did you keep the LEED Platinum building? Because San Francisco all about the green and preserving and all this stuff. So what did you guys, apply to that concept,
Well, we were conservative with wattages, especially being a Title 24 project. We had to be. So we worked within the limits, and we knew what things we could do and what things we couldn't based on the spaces that we had. We worked to be extremely efficient in the private offices so that we could actually push for the continuous coves in the public spaces. Katie may want to add some more to that because she looks at power densities quite a bit and keeps us out of trouble.
Definitely, it is understanding the code, understanding what you're allowed, and also the design where the space needs to have additional oomph, additional power, and strategizing, using lower power in other spaces that maybe aren't as spectacular in terms of the view and the finish, et cetera. So that definitely, along with just really understanding what's written so that you can use it to benefit the project.
So were you the Title 24 expert? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, I did deal with the lighting power density calculations. Yes.
Okay. And I'm interested now because they're revising it again. Is this?
Yes, the newest version is very strict. It's going to be challenging for upcoming projects, but of course we embrace it. And again, read the fine print.
This is Jean-Paul. First of all, congratulations. This is a great project. I really like it. And I was wondering how, in reality, you deal with your expectations of maintenance with a project of this magnitude. You must have some past experiences that tell you that the color of the LEDs may shift in different directions or depreciation. So how did you anticipate these maintenance challenges in a project like this?
Yeah, well, I think one thing for our office, just as a general rule of thumb, we specify products that we know are extremely reliable. We specify manufacturers that we've had, longstanding relationships with because we know that they're around when we call them and they're around when our clients call them. Specifically for the coves on this project, they're just similar to the comment I had made earlier. They are quick connect fixtures. So if something fails, it can easily be replaced. Likewise, this client, because they have a lot of offices throughout the states, we've been working with this particular law firm for, I want to say, a little bit over 5 years, 6 years on multiple jobs. And so the fact that we've been able to do multiple projects with them actually allows us to develop almost a vocabulary of manufacturers and equipment that, you know, they know who they can go to on a sort of repeat basis for maintenance. So they're familiar with the equipment, they're familiar with the products. And the fact that we're re-specifying manufacturers that, again, we now have a joint relationship, right? Not just us as specifiers, but them as the ultimate buyer. I think it helps the process.
So I want to congratulate the designers again on an absolutely wonderful job. And thank you for your participation in the 2020 Tesla Awards. And we'll look
Thank you
forward
so
to
much.
exhibitions next year.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.